Good to have you with us. This is ARIRANG News, live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with a record-high current account surplus. Korea's central bank says it hit an all-time high last year. However, there are concerns that this surplus trend may be slowing, mostly due to sluggish domestic demand. Hwang Ji-hye explains.
Korea's current account surplus set a new all-time high in 2014. The Bank of Korea says the amount totaled over $89 billion, up more than 10% from the previous record surplus posted a year earlier. The amount, however, falls slightly short of the central bank's forecast that was made last month of $90 billion. The balance of goods last year rose to $92.8 billion as exports went up 0.5% in 2014 from the previous year, while imports dropped 1.3%. The pace of export growth in goods was the slowest since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. Exports then dropped almost 16%. Now, slowing exports coupled with a drop in imports is pointing to a current account surplus trend that mainly stems from sluggish domestic demand. A report by the Korea International Trade Association also shows the country's exports continue to contribute less and less to economic growth. The rate of contribution to growth of Korea's traditional growth engine exports stood at 37.7% in 2013, down from 51% posted a year earlier. The figure also marks the lowest since 2008, when it fell to slightly over 20%. The deficit of the services account, which includes spending by Koreans overseas, stood at more than $8 billion in 2014, expanding from a $6.5 billion deficit recorded a year earlier. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And here's another all-time high record. The size of Korea's merger and acquisition market set a new record last year, a fourfold jump from the year 2011. And with the government easing regulations this year, analysts expect the market to grow even further. For this story, here's Kim Min-ji.
Mergers and acquisitions by Korean companies hit a record high last year. Korean firms carried out M&A deals totaling almost $80 billion in 2014, nearly double from a year earlier, according to data compiled by Bloomberg and the Korea Capital Market Institute. Although the number of deals struck declined, big deals boosted the figures. To name a few, Samsung Group inked a deal to sell its chemical and defensive affiliates to Hanwha Group as part of its restructuring, and there was also the merger of Daum Communications and Kakao Corporation, two of the nation's biggest IT firms. The domestic growth is in line with the global trend. The global M&A market reached $3.8 trillion last year, up 71% from a year earlier, and the largest since 2007. Industry watchers forecast the domestic M&A market to get even bigger this year. This as the government eases regulations regarding M&As and low interest rates have made financing cheaper. The restructuring of conglomerates and brokerage houses are also expected to drive the growth, as well as more big deals expected this year. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
The number of high school graduates who found jobs surpassed the 10 million mark for the first time last year. Statistics Korea says the number was up nearly 270,000 from the previous year and took nearly half of the total jobs added in 2014. That also pushed up the percentage of employees with high school diplomas in the nation's entire workforce to 40%. The agency attributes the increase to a government policy that encourages businesses to hire people with high school diplomas and to a drop in college entrance rates in recent years. Now, Now, there was a time when LG Electronics was one of the world's 3 largest handset makers. These days, though, it's seen as a marginal player in the smartphone sector, but the company has ambitious plans to regain its reputation. Our Shin Se-min has this week's Industry Insight.
It all started with Apple's rollout of the iPhone. Then the race to be the winning choice seemed to focus on larger displays, higher definition, thinner and lighter, and onto cheaper smartphones. They call it a curved smartphone or bendable, although not exactly bendable like this, but definitely more bouncier and flexible than other smartphones. But with smartphones highly commoditized and cheap Chinese phones with all the so-called cool factors flooding the market, could this shuffle up the smartphone industry? Not immediately. But LG officials believe its new phone has a feature providing new potentials to the saturated smartphone market, a market in which more than 1/3 of the world's entire population is forecast to own a smartphone by the end of the year.
I don't see it being a game changer, but then I still do see as a point of differentiation for their flagship phone. Yes, so they are moving in a direction which I think eventually some of the industry players would also move into.
Experts believe the curved smartphone represents the first step in achieving flexibility and display innovations that are needed to develop wearable gadgets. Curved displays are required as they need to be wrapped around wrists or other body parts. Experts believe the wearables are the next big thing for smartphone makers who will have to overcome technological barriers, particularly in displays.
Probably something that you'd wear on the inside of your wrist with a large display and that's wearable, or something that actually rolled up or folded up that you could put into your pocket and then bring out in its full form. Those are the 2 implementations that seem the most likely.
It may look and sound futuristic, with smart devices rolling and folding in the hands of users. But industry watchers say this technology could be fully commercialized sooner than you imagine.
It will happen soon, in 5 to 7 years' time. Right now, only LG Electronics and Samsung Electronics have the technology to curve the display, and that technology will definitely add value to their smartphone sales in the long run.
Korea's LG Electronics has been steadily increasing its investment in R&D since 2011, with spending reaching some $2.8 billion in 2013. There's no guarantee such investment will lead to a game-changing wearable gizmo, but working in tandem with its affiliate LG Display, the world's largest screen maker, the analyst says LG is giving itself a valuable head start. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Korea's ruling Saenuri Party has elected a new floor leader. 3-term lawmaker Yoo Seung-min will now be in charge of coordinating major policies and reform plans with the presidential office and the government. Park Ji-won reports.
3-term lawmaker Yoo Seung-min has been elected the ruling Saenuri Party's new floor leader with 84 votes. 149 of the party's 158 lawmakers cast their ballots on Monday at the National Assembly. In what had been a tight race, Yoo defeated 4-term lawmaker and former Maritime Minister Lee Ju-young. Yoo is more critical of the administration than his opponent Lee, who was considered a pro-Park Geun-hye candidate. Upon winning the election, Yoo emphasized the importance of direct communication with the presidential office and the government.
I vow to have sincere communication with the presidential office and the government. We will closely cooperate while pondering together which policies will truly reflect and serve the will of the people.
4-term lawmaker Won Yu-chul will assist Yoo as the party's chief policymaker. The floor leader is in charge of spearheading ruling party legislation and coordinating party policy. You and the ruling Senate Party leader Kim Moo-sung are both from outside the mainstream, so huge change in relations between the ruling party and the presidential office is expected. Previous floor leader Lee Won-gu resigned from the post late last month when he was named prime minister. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And the National Assembly began this month's extraordinary session on this Monday. The rival parties will focus on a couple of key confirmation hearings as well as a controversial tax code revision. The ruling Saenuri Party wishes to pass bills that will help revitalize the economy. It also put reform of the public pension scheme for civil servants on top of its agenda. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, says it plans to focus on adjusting the current year-end tax settlement scheme, which has faced heavy criticism from the public. Confirmation hearings for Prime Minister nominee Lee Won-gu and the Supreme Court Justice are also set to be held next week. Now, the final hearing in the so-called nut rage trial involving Cho Yeon-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, is unfolding this afternoon. On the witness stand for the first time is Park Chang-jin, the crew member allegedly ordered by Cho to get off the plane for serving her nuts in a bag and not on a plate. During today's hearing, Park said, unlike Korean Air CEO Cho Yang-ho's claims, he's never had an apology from the senior Cho. Park also said the elder Cho's comments about wanting to help him as he returned to work seemed false and that his dignity has been trampled on. He added that he is in poor health condition and his whole family is suffering. The prosecution is pushing to find Cho Yeon-ah guilty of 4 main charges, including a violation of aviation safety rules. The verdict is expected in a couple of weeks' time. Now, North Korea has accused the United States of rejecting its latest invitation for talks. And the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, made some interesting comments about how he no longer intends to sit down and talk with those criticizing Pyongyang's socialist system. For this report, here's Hwang Ji-hye.
North Korea says the United States is working hard to shift the blame for the current deadlock over dialogue. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Sunday that Washington refused its invitation to send one of its top diplomats to Pyongyang. This just days after U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Policy Sung Kim said following a meeting in Tokyo that the window to dialogue remains open as long as Pyongyang demonstrates its sincerity.
North Koreans will need to demonstrate its commitment to denuclearization in a concrete manner before we can resume any serious negotiations.
Last month, North Korea said it was willing to suspend nuclear testing if the U.S. halted its annual joint military drills with South Korea, an offer flatly rejected by Washington. Now Pyongyang could be shifting its stance. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was quoted by state media as saying Pyongyang would no longer sit with, quote, rabid dogs openly barking about toppling its socialist system, while he personally oversaw joint naval and air force drills targeting the U.S. Navy. North Korea's blossoming friendship with Russia could be behind Pyongyang's confidence. Russia on Friday revealed plans for a large-scale military exercise with North Korea, and Kim has reportedly chosen Moscow as his first overseas destination since taking power. Experts say a stronger relationship with Russia would be a huge breakthrough for North Korea, which stands as the most isolated country in the world. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
In other international news, the Islamic State militant group claims to have beheaded more hostages, this time that of an Iraqi officer and 2 soldiers. The latest online posting comes a matter of days after the group killed its second Japanese hostage, Kenji Goto. Our Ji Myung-gil has the latest.
In one photo, a blindfolded man, presumed to be a police lieutenant colonel, kneels in the street as a masked militant beheads his victim with a machete. Another photo shows an overweight masked militant struggling to behead a man identified as a captured Iraqi soldier. A second soldier was beheaded at the same location. If the photos are authentic, the killings would come just a day after the extremist group beheaded Japanese journalist Kenji Koto. A Jordanian pilot also being held by IS is facing the same gruesome fate as Mr. Koto. The pilot's father has appealed to the extremist group to spare his son's life.
We appeal to Islamic State in Iraq and Syria and ask them in the name of God and His Prophet, peace be upon him, and with the nationality of religion, the blood, to secure the life of our son, the pilot Muathal Kasespe, and be gracious to release him.
The pilot was captured after his jet crashed in northeastern Syria in December during a bombing mission against IS. Islamic State has called for the release of Iraqi woman Sajida Rishawi, a would-be suicide bomber, in exchange for the pilot's life. She has been on death row in Jordan for her role in terrorist attacks on 3 hotels that killed nearly 60 people back in 2005. The UN Security Council on Sunday condemned Islamic State's execution of Japanese freelance reporter Kenji Koto. Council members stressed that Koto's execution has once again demonstrated the brutal tactics of IS militants and said those responsible for his murder will be held accountable. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Greece's new finance minister says his eyes are on his country's financial health and that of Europe's, as he pledged once again that Athens will make good on its debts.
My concern as a European first is that this present bailout program is costing the rest of Europe, not just us, too much. We're interested in minimizing the losses to our partners.
Now, following a meeting with his French counterpart in Paris, Greece's finance minister told reporters that Greece is rolling out a set of reforms to cut its, quote, addiction to European bailout funds. He said Athens will no longer accept more bailout cash and that he will work with individual countries and entities on repayment plans, but not with the so-called Troika, which he called a committee of technocrats.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Hyundai Motor Group has asked the Seoul city government for permission to build what will become Korea's tallest building on its recently acquired plot of land in Seoul's southern Gangnam district. Son Jung-in has more.
In September last year, Hyundai Motor Group purchased an 80,000 square meter plot of land in southern Seoul from Korea Electric Power Corporation for nearly $10 billion. Korea's second largest group planned to establish a global business center on the land, including its headquarters and a car-based theme park. Last month, Chairman Chung Mong-gu laid out the group's vision to construct a 105-story building during his annual New Year's speech to Hyundai employees. On Sunday, the group finally submitted its detailed development scheme to the Seoul city government. The finalized plan is to build a 115-story structure that will house the group's headquarters, offices, and other business facilities. It's 10 floors higher than the previously envisioned building and will stand 571 meters tall. Hyundai Motor Group also aims to build a commercial facility inside a separate 62-story building featuring a convention center, hotel, and shopping mall. If everything goes to plan, the construction will become the tallest building in Korea. The Seoul city government says it will convene a meeting of experts from different fields to review the proposal and examine the impact the building could have on traffic flow and the environment of the local area. Currently, the 305-meter Northeast Asia Trade Tower in the western port city of Incheon is the tallest building in Korea. The Lotte World Tower in southeastern Seoul, which has run into a number of construction and safety controversies, will be 555 meters tall once it is completed next year. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Research utilizing genetically modified organisms has helped bring about valuable scientific discoveries, but there have always been concerns about the organisms escaping the lab and destroying biological ecosystems. Some of these concerns, however, can now be put to rest thanks to a group of scientists in the U.S. Connie Lee has the story.
Remember the movie Jurassic Park? Well, these genetically modified dinosaurs weren't supposed to survive in the natural world on their own, but they did and wreaked havoc. It's a fictional case, but scientists have long been concerned about genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, leaking out of the laboratory and into the natural world. However, those concerns may soon be eased as scientists have developed a new strategy for rendering bacteria incapable of surviving in the natural world. Researchers from Harvard and Yale have developed genetically engineered E. coli bacteria, whose survival depends solely on laboratory-made synthetic amino acids, which act as sort of a genetic firewall. Scientists say that without the compound, if the bacteria escape their controlled environment of the laboratory, they will die quickly.
What the researchers have created are bacteria that depend on artificial nutrients that do not exist in nature.
Genetically modified bacteria are used to make many products, including pharmaceutical proteins like insulin and dairy products like yogurt. So far, researchers have only worked with bacteria and are far from applying the strategy to plants and animals. However, they do believe it's a step forward in making genetically modified organisms more appealing, as this method of biological containment represents a smaller threat to the natural world. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And we move on to some cultural news. Video art has taken a new dimension since it first appeared in the 60s. The most well-known Korean video artist is, of course, Baek Nam-jun, but one of the earliest recognized is apparently someone else. Our Im Yoon-hee has a preview of an exhibition featuring that artist, along with another that brings car art into focus. Take a look.
Park Hyun-gi. It's not a name in video art you hear as much as Baek Nam-jun, but it's just as important. Considered the first artist to use video as a medium for art in Korea, Park Hyun-gi took a bold risk in experimenting with something new. This exhibition showcases more than 1,000 pieces by the late artist, some that date back to his earliest years of exploration, as well as works completed later in his career.
Park is different from Baek Nam-jun because his base comes from a Korean Orient origin while using a Western hybrid medium.
This may look like a rusty old car, something from an abandoned yard, but this car sits amid a flurry of words carved out by artist Kim Jong-gu. It's part of Hyundai Motor's exhibition Brilliant Memories, which takes a look at the company's history from an artistic viewpoint. The possibilities of the automobile are seemingly endless here. The works of 14 different artists lighting the way for both automobiles and art. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The air has gotten much softer since this morning as temperatures have risen. The day is expected to get milder as we proceed into our day. However, we'll continuously get large gaps between the mornings to days and days to night, so make sure to take good care of yourselves. And today will generally be a clear day, except in the province, where currently there is a heavy snowfall alert in effect and with the high levels of flying dust. Now, this first week of February should be mild and comfortable with temperatures above seasonal average, even on the day of Ipchun, the beginning of spring, according to the lunar calendar. Now, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 5 this afternoon, while southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will linger at 8 and 10 degrees. Now moving over to other regions such as Jeju Island gets up to 8 as well. Dokdo hits down to 4, while Mankangang is chillier at -4 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and let's have a look at the weather forecasts around the world.
And that does it for this edition of our newscast. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time.